All right, you see this? Okay, good. So I'm going to talk about a new project that the European Wilderness Society, together with 16 other partners, has recently started in the LIFE program. It's called LivestockProtect, and it is a project. Let me also activate my camera. Hold on. It is a project that you don't hear me? Okay. A project for improving livestock protection for sustainable human-wildlife coexistence in the Alpine region. So I'm quickly going to run through what human-wildlife conflict is and what actually also human-human conflict is that is closely related to it. I will talk about the brief history of the wolf populations in Austria, Germany, and Italy, and some of the challenges that livestock owners are facing in the Alpine region. Then, based on these challenges, we developed a strategy or an approach to work towards sustainable solutions for coexistence, and those led to the creation of this new project, which I will introduce in the end of this presentation. So when we talk about human-wildlife conflict, we had a couple of presentations earlier today, and you've also probably seen this picture or this video last week from a hiker in Utah that was stalked by a mountain lion, a cougar, for 6 minutes. So this was really a human-wildlife conflict situation where the hiker saw two small cats, and he thought that they were bobcats and wanted to take a picture, but it appeared that they were mountain lion cubs, and the mother was not so happy that the hiker was so close to its cubs, and you know, this happened, that the cougar chased the hiker away for a full 6 minutes. In Europe, we see something different, especially regarding the wolf. And the wolf is a topic that has been today a couple of times presented already. In Europe, we see a lot of messages about conflict situations with the wolf. And here I just show a couple of press clippings from articles in the news that, for example, regions should become wolf-free, or that the farmers are waiting for the culling of wolves, and that the sheep owners want to reduce the wolf population. So the question is this also really a human-wolf conflict, or is there something else going on here? And in fact, when we talk about the human-wolf conflict, it's often a human-human conflict, because we're often discussing with other people about the wolf and not so much with the wolf itself. The wolf is just, as you see here in this graphic, on the side doing its own thing. So regarding the human-wildlife conflict that we see in Europe, it's often overshadowed by human-human conflict, and often this also leads to very emotional discussions, and it's typically between nature conservationists and hunters, as well as farmers and shepherds. So to overcome these conflicts, it is needed to address deep-rooted conflicts between these different groups of people, which allows us to find common grounds and agree on practical mitigation measures to address the conflict. When we look to the short history of the wolf was historically present across Europe, and it has been basically eradicated in many regions of Europe throughout the 19th and the 20th century. So basically by the 1920s, it was completely eradicated from the Alpine region, and only small populations survived in other mountainous regions in Europe, such as the Dinaric Mountains or the Apennines in Italy. And in these regions where the wolves always survived, the locals adapted their way of living to the presence of the wolves. And in this picture, you see also a shepherd that we recently visited, who is living in the Apennine Mountains in Italy. And he has these guarding dogs, livestock guarding dogs, who are keeping the livestock safe and keeping the wolves and other predators away. So when we talk about these livestock guarding dogs and we talk about wolves, they're actually quite closely linked to each other, because apparently, when we looked at the origin of these livestock guarding dogs and the survival of wolves, it seems that these areas are more or less overlapping. And we tried to visualize this in a map where we highlighted all the numbers are different breeds of livestock guarding dogs. And in orange, you see the dispersion of wolves, where they distribution of wolves, where they lived in the 1980s. So there is a clear overlap in areas where people are used to have livestock guarding dogs and to live together with the wolf, compared to more in Central and Northern Europe, where there's not this case, where they're not using livestock guarding dogs and have eradicated the wolf in many cases. So the fact that the wolf was almost exterminated, almost extinct in Europe, led to the fact that the CITES Convention in 1973 first established a protective status for the wolf. And this was quickly followed by the Berne Convention in 1997. And the latest big official protective status is originating from a Habitats Directive from 1992. And since its protection status was so firmly embedded in the European legislation, the wolf has gradually expanded again from the areas where it survived to its former distribution, basically. And this is all in a natural way. So we've seen stories from bear reintroduction. There's also lynx reintroduction. But with the wolf, there are no official reintroduction projects that have happened. So the wolf is gradually expanding in a natural way. Then it became, of course, an issue how to live together with the wolf. And in Germany, there was already in 2017 that these organizations you see here on the right side, you see the NABU, the biggest nature protection organization in Germany, you see WWF, but you also see the Ecological Hunting Association of Germany, you see a Shepherds Association, and all these organizations together worked on a joint statement which they released, which is called Protect Biodiversity. And the chairman of the Federal Association of Professional Shepherds said, of course, the predators are a serious threat, but it does not give us the right to eradicate a species such as the wolf. And the future of sheep farming and the preservation of biodiversity are inseparably linked. So we are working together to find solutions. And this is also linked to what was shared earlier in the Eurolarge Carnivore project, that it's very important to work together with the different kind of stakeholders for a common cause and to find solutions. So this joint statement contained a couple of different principles. One of the principles was, for example, that wolf management must be planned effectively, involving all the stakeholders. Another one was that the prevention of the wolf attacks must be the primary goal of herd and livestock protection, and this must be done professionally with the right tools and with the right training. There must be support to implement this herd protection, and it should occur in a most easy way, so not so bureaucratic. The damage compensation for wolf attacks on livestock is the responsibility of the public authorities, and that the shooting of wolves is no alternative for herd protection methods. And this is also what the European Union has always stated. Shooting of wolves is not a good solution, and all other measures should be tried first to prevent livestock depredation. Another principle of this joint statement was that the livestock guarding dogs provide an essential contribution to the herd protection. And we see this developing more and more in regions where the livestock guarding dogs historically have not been used, that they are now learning how to handle the livestock guarding dogs and how to use them to protect the livestock. And then finally, what they also say is that the funding of the implementation of herd protection is a European responsibility. Like it is protecting the wolf on a European level, it is also the responsibility of Europe to ensure that there's funding to protect the livestock. So this inspired us, together with other organizations, to also look at a way in which we can work together in Austria, in northern Italy, and in southern Germany to work towards a coexistence with the wolf and to improve livestock protection. So when we look at the wolves in the Austrian Alps, you see here on the map from 2019, the confirmed cases with DNA probes where wolves were present. And if you look at the history of wolves in Europe, in Austria, there was the first resettlement officially in 2002 only. By 2017, there were 8 different confirmed wolves from DNA probes. And in 2018, this grew already to 13 adults. And in 2020, this year, it is estimated that there are now about 35 different wolves in the country. And when we look at the number of livestock animals, so this is highlighting the Alpine area in Austria, and you see that actually across the entire Alpine range, there is livestock. In the higher Alpine mountain range, there's of course a little bit less livestock than in the lower ranges, but you see that all across the mountain range, there are livestock units. There's enough sheep, there are goats and cows present. So it is very important to find a way to sustainably protect these animals from depredation. Now, when we look to the next region in South Tyrol and Trentino, so that is here in the blue little box, you see that the first resettlement was actually of wolves in this region in 2010. And by last year, there were 8 wolf packs in total in this region, while the total entire Italian wolf population is estimated between 329, 375 individuals. And as you see also on this picture, which is by the way from the LIFE project Wolf Alps, you see that most wolf packs, the green bubbles, are located in the Western Alps, and only a few compared to the Western Alps are located in the Eastern Alps. So in 2020, this year, the latest estimate is that in South Tyrol, there are now between 8 and 13 individuals. And when we look at the density of livestock in the region, again, you see here that the density is quite high, especially in the lower elevated regions. And you see there in the region of Bolzano as well, you see quite some darker spots that indicate that the number of livestock units is actually quite high. When we then look at Bavaria, you see that in 2006 was the first resettlement of the wolves. And in 2015 only, the first wolf pack was confirmed. Now, last year, there were 14 different individuals officially in Bavaria confirmed. And in 2020 and this year, it is estimated that there are at least 2 packs and 2 pairs. Now, I marked in the blue square, in the blue rectangle, the Alpine region. And you see that the wolf packs and the wolf pairs are still a little bit outside the Alpine region. But it's important to know, because in the Alpine region, you can see again that the density of livestock units is quite high, especially in the northeastern part. You see the dark areas. There's a lot of cow grazing, horses even, and also sheep and goats. So it's important to look for a way to find a coexistence between the wolves and the livestock owners. Now, the livestock owners are facing more challenges than just the presence of wolves and bears. There is going to be a new EU regulation that is going to be active in 2021, which is targeting the organic farming in Europe. And it says that in Article 14 that all livestock owners must have their livestock all year round with access to open air areas, preferably pastures. Now, in the high Alpine regions, that's causing a little bit of a headache, because the Alpine farmers, as you see here also in a picture from about a month ago, the Alpine farmers should keep their animals on high Alpine pastures where they're currently unprotected against depredation, but also against weather, such as a snow dump like there was last month, but also sickness and even accidents by falling off cliffs, for example. So not only the presence of large carnivores, but also EU regulations are forcing livestock owners to do something about the situation with their livestock protection. So proper livestock protection is needed. And Therefore, also cooperation is very important, not only with the agricultural sector, but also with the politicians, with the decision makers, and with the environmental sector. So about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was a new project idea formed to tackle this challenge that the Alpine farmers are facing. And it led to the development of an international consortium that applied to funds for an EU funded project to address the livestock protection issue. It was from the very first start already the idea to have the Farmers Association leading this project and representing both the organic and the conventional farmers, because it is important that the stakeholders, as was earlier said, that the stakeholders know who you are. So in this sense, we had a peer-to-peer interaction, farmers talking to farmers. And this is then done in cooperation with organizations from the environmental sector, from the governmental sector, but also from the research and the tourism sector, because all of these sectors are closely linked to one another when it comes to livestock protection in the Alpine region. Now, last year, we submitted this project to the LIFE program, and we were successfully evaluated. And this is now one of the unique LIFE nature projects in Austria, which has recently started. And when we look at the project partnership in different categories, so we see in the agricultural sector, we have the lead partner. The coordinating beneficiary is Bio Austria, Niederösterreich und Wien. And together with 5 other organic and conventional farming associations and organizations from the agricultural sector, they are working directly with their farmers. So we are representing over 16,000 farmers in this project to improve livestock protection in the Alpine region. Also from the nature conservation sector, there's quite a list of organizations involved. And then from the research and the tourism sector, we have different organizations from South Tyrol, from Bavaria, and from Austria to target the challenges that we're facing. So the objectives of this project are basically first and foremost to increase the acceptance for livestock protection, because not everybody is happy with fences on the pastures or with livestock guarding dogs on the pastures. So it is important that there's peer-to-peer capacity building training, so that the farmers help the farmers to learn how to implement the right ways for livestock protection. And with this training, we want to increase their knowledge about why it is important to implement livestock protection and provide them the right tools to do so, because there might be a material that is not as effective in weather extremes, or for example, in snowy conditions. So we need to give them also the tips or the recommendations to use the right tools to protect their livestock effectively. And in the end, we want to reach a behavioral change amongst the stakeholders, such as the farmers and the shepherds, but also the hunters, to implement these concrete measures to accept and implement livestock protection for a better coexistence. We want to use we want to promote the use of livestock guarding dogs in combination with the shepherds that know how to deal with them, how to handle them. So it is important that we look at the available training there is for shepherds in the areas that we are working in, that we help shepherds to get the right livestock guarding dogs and to create an exchange of knowledge and an exchange of experience between the shepherds to use these livestock guarding dogs throughout the Alpine region. We will also look at detection dogs that are trained specifically to detect wolf scat, so so that they can help to surveil and that they can help the surveillance of wolf monitoring. And we want to help the farmers with practical assistance with a volunteer and an ambassador network to help building fences, for example, to help roaming around the pastures with the sheep and the dogs. And there's, of course, also lobby necessary because the European Union is revising currently the Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP, and every country has their regional development plans, the RDPs. And there needs to be lobby for these funding structures to increase the support, the financial support there is to implement livestock protection effectively, at least. And we also see that between the different regions and between the different countries, there is inconsistency in the legislation regarding compensation payments or regarding the protection and financing of livestock protection. So the project also wants to address this inconsistency and tries to decrease it over the project time. And all in all, we want to inform the youth, the general public, and other stakeholders about fact-based knowledge. So we will have, for example, an exhibition that will be traveling around the project area to inform the public about livestock protection in the Alpine region and the coexistence with the wolf. So the project in numbers. We started this project officially last month in September 2020, and it will run for 5 years, so until August 25. The budget is nearly 5 million euros, and 75% of this is co-financed by the European Union. The remaining funds is a contribution from the partners. Now, what we want to achieve at least during these 5 years is that we have at least 1,000 participants in our training for livestock farmers and shepherds to train them on how to use and how to implement the livestock protection effectively. We will train more than 100 livestock protection consultants to help local livestock farmers to improve their livestock protection. And we will establish 20 livestock protection competence centers where livestock farmers and other interested farmers can visit and see with their own eyes how effective livestock protection can be implemented. We will have 20 trained scat dogs, as I just mentioned. They will help the surveillance of the wolf and will also help to rapidly assess when there has been a depredation and there is a scat that is found nearby to assess whether this was from a wolf or, for example, from a dog or a fox. There will be at least 250 volunteers participating in a network across the 3 different regions to help the farmers with building their fences, with herding the sheep, as you see here on this picture. And there will be at least 100 ambassadors to promote the implementation of livestock protection throughout this region. And besides these numbers, there will be a lot of other things done, online and offline social media communication. And this will all develop in the coming months and years. So if you want to know more about this project, I recommend you follow us on the website livestockprotect.info. And we are, of course, also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So with this, I would like to close this presentation and thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, please, now is the time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick, for that presentation. So we have one question on the Q&A box. Usually it's from Miha, and usually we talk about the predator number and acceptance amongst the public and the protection of livestock. Do you think we should also address the number of livestock and its public acceptance due to the livestock's impact on the environment, for example, climate change, land use change, and biodiversity loss?
Yes, thank you. It is important to address this as well. And in the project, we will address this by looking at the impact of livestock protection on the biodiversity in the Alpine region, for example. We're also assessing the public acceptance, not so much for wolves, because there has been a lot of live projects and other projects before that have done that. We're looking at the public acceptance for the implementation of livestock protection, for their acceptance towards livestock guarding dogs, because it is a very tightly connected situation where livestock protection and the presence of wolves are, depending on each other to both be accepted by the general public. So yes, we should definitely address also the public acceptance for livestock protection and livestock in general. and the numbers of livestock available or present in certain areas is mostly already available on governmental websites, for example. So I hope that answered your question.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Nick? Oh, Peter. Peter has a question. All right. You should be able to speak now, Peter.
So you've described well how probably wolves and guarding dogs probably co-evolved over centuries. What about the role? But of course, there's going to be variation in wolf behavior. So at what point do you take out those wolves that continuously challenge both guarding dogs and livestock?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question. So for this, it's very simple. The EU has a certain set of rules which categorize when a wolf becomes a so-called problematic wolf, when it's displaying behavior that is not what people say is not normal to other wolves. So there is for different countries, there is a number of depredation attacks that a certain wolf has done, or when it's causing too much trouble, this single individual wolf can become can be taken out. Let's put it that way. It is, however, much easier said than done. As we know also from Germany, where at some point there was a problem wolf that was overcoming the livestock protection on a regular basis, and then the government has issued hunters to kill this wolf or to cull it, and that took months and many hundreds of thousands of euros before this wolf was actually found. And there are also cases where some individual wolf actually disappears and is never found again. So it is very difficult to say, let's put it this way. There are clear rules from the EU what to do with problem wolves, and we should all, as Europeans, follow these rules. So it is not up to the hunters, it is not up to the farmers, nor is it up to the environmental organizations to say we can or cannot shoot this wolf. The EU has already said that for all of us.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that answer, Nick. If no one else has any more, we have one more question in the chat. Okay. So you mentioned the change in the EU regulations for organic farming from 2021, Nick, and the necessity of the availability of open areas for livestock animals. Do you think, regardless of all the support directed towards livestock protection, there will be a decreasing tendency in farmers using pastures in the high alpine regions?
Well, we see, Tim can, yeah, all right. So we see that a lot of, that basically farmers are becoming less and less popular. Farming becomes less and less popular in high alpine regions. The youth is often moving to the urban areas, leaving the older generation behind. There also now with the COVID pandemics, we see that the opposite is happening. People are moving away from the city centers, which are often more corona hotspots. So there will be a dynamic process of people moving to cities and from cities back to the rural landscape. So yes, there will be, at the moment, we're witnessing a decrease in the farmers using the alpine pastures in the high alpine region. But there should be, over time, a balanced situation where alpine pastures will be maintained and used by young and old farmers for the biodiversity and for the livestock that they're having. Does this answer your question? Okay, good. If there are no more questions at the moment, and then I think we can go into a short break.